being a black male teacher in that classroom, how is it? How has it been in the school system, period?
I think, well, as far as that, I think it's a perspective. Mm-hmm. So I try to keep a little update on technology. So I see reading as becoming obsolete. Mm. So you have audiobooks. Every Instagram is what? Is that all pictures? Snapchat pictures. So why would you're almost teaching somebody something that's going to be probably obsolete in their lifetime. So, for example, MIT already has a chip where you can just put it in someone and they can use their mind to search, or that's where technology is going. So eventually, and then Google is another example. Students don't retain any information because you can Google anything. So I would say even the perspective of teaching has moved to teaching students how to navigate situations as opposed to teaching them to retain information. Mm-hmm. Because you can Google everything, so they just don't retain it. Mm-hmm. And I think probably now in the next 20 to 30 years, there's going to be a big switch in education as far as what to teach people. Because if you have Google available and Google is in your mind, I can Google World War II and find out what happened in 5 minutes. Someone can give me a synopsis of what happened. But it's how to apply what happened then to there. For example, I had students do an exercise Friday to determine what was fact and what was an opinion, which was a lot more difficult than I thought it would be. Really? They don't really know how to discern someone's opinion from someone giving factual information that's backed up by data.
Mm-hmm. Terrell, hold your question because I know you were going to jump in, but I just wanted to ask, in today's society, I would expect that, because if it's on Twitter, it's fact. If it's on Facebook, it's fact. If it's on Snapchat, it's fact. if the president tweets it, it's fact. So I would assume that, I could see how they could get to that point. I guess I'll put it that way.
Yeah, but no one's teaching how to discern. That's probably the more important than teaching what happened. If you can't determine what was an opinion and what was a fact, you can't disseminate the information for any purpose. It's just information.
Terrell, go ahead with your question. That was good.
I was going to say, since I'm the least removed from high school, in my opinion, that's been the issue in general, is the ground level. Is why are we here and what are we trying to accomplish? We don't retain anything because we're teaching to a test. Or from my perspective, we're learning to pass a test. That's it. We're not learning to necessarily, here's how you survive. Here are principles that you will actually use consistently afterwards. There's plenty of other things that I would think would be more beneficial, such as, at this point, the technology classes on how to use Office Suite products, stuff like that. But if we don't have time, because we have to be on schedule for that test that's coming every 9 weeks or every semester or at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Very true. Very true. Mm-hmm. Corey, do you want to add anything in there?
That even goes. Is my audio better, by the way?
You sound good. Everything is going
great. Okay. That goes back to even when I was in school. 12 years ago, 13 years ago, almost. We basically just learned things that we don't use in real life. Like, I'm learning about the war, as you say, but it's like, when am I really going to use the war? Like, when am I using this information that you're giving me? And I didn't learn about credit, really. We had economics class, but we weren't learning about how to manage money. We were learning about silly things that we're not using. And I'm looking at my kids now and the things that they're learning, and I'm like, you're never going to use this stuff. Like, you're not. And I'm hoping that by the time they get to high school, the education will change a little bit, because it's alarming to me how, now that I'm not in school and I've been out for, about 10 years, obviously 12, but now I notice more and more of man, they didn't teach us anything in school. Like, I went to school in high school. I went all 4 years and I did all this stuff. But what did I really get out of it? I got a high school diploma. I mean, that doesn't really get you anywhere nowadays anyways. And then you get to college and it's like, I just feel like education as a whole is not preparing us for reality. And it's more of just like you've told me before, it's more of like glorified daycare more than anything.
I mean, that is my homeschool bias coming out when I say glorified daycare, because when a lot of teachers went on strike, really around the country, what was that, a year, maybe 2 years ago, where you had a lot of school districts going on strike, parents were tripping out, and it wasn't about our kids they need to be educated. It was like, my kids need to watch them. You know,
who's gonna watch them?
Who's gonna watch them? And it was smart. Yeah. Teachers knew. They were like, "We're gonna sit back. Stay at home with those things.
Yeah.
You know, they gonna cave." And of course, you know, we hear the stories anyway of parents. I'll just say, listening to conversations and things I may hear or my wife may hear. The parents want those kids. Those many stay-at-home moms, they want their kids gone during the day so they can go on their lunchtime play dates, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then they can be at home when their husband comes home at 4 or 5 o'clock. And then when he say, "How come dinner in the house ain't clean? You're not busy. I've been all day. I've been working on." The kids been in school all day. So what you been doing? I mean, there are a lot of moms out there like that. And if you don't believe me, look at, well, not this year, but matter of fact, you can probably look this year to be a perfect example. Watch the number of women and men, but women especially, that are putting on there how those kids need to get out the house, the kids getting on their nerves. And so as a teacher for you, Kurt, I get you get to look back and say, that's what I deal with day in and day out. Now
this is going to be great for teachers.
Yes.
There will be no, why are those teachers getting the raise? And we're like, just give them the money. Just give them the money. It's all good now.
But I will say, and my curriculum at home is probably a teacher's nightmare, because I guess I view teaching in my home similar to the way you do, Kurt, in a way, where it's all about critical thinking. So I don't have any fancy, elaborate classes. We just did one on race in Hollywood. The whole point in that was what you see on that television, and we cut the cable and everything, so it's not like we have a TV on 24/7. But it's just the point that what you see on television, or even whether it's a media coming through your phone or whatever, it's not real. These are the people that created it. Every single thing you see is by design, and it's just trying to teach critical thinking. Well, if we're talking history, let's look at history from a critical eye, not let's believe it. And before we talk about politics later, I'll just throw it out there now. I think that's probably something we really see over the last 4 years. Folks will believe stuff hook, line, and sinker. We saw you do it. No, I didn't. Oh, I guess they didn't do it. I mean, you can lie. We had more people than he did. No, you didn't. Look at this picture. Yes, we did. And then people are like, well, he said they did have more people. So I guess, it's amazing how gullible folks are. So, Kurt, I applaud you for teaching those kids that, because it's a skill that I think we're losing as a society overall, as a whole.
That goes to your by design. I think it's intentionally by design.
Mm-hmm.
So, back to one of my theories.
Okay.
After the 1970s, and you had the hippie movement, where people were taught to critically think up until that point, education changed from critical thinking to we're going to teach to the test. You have to memorize this information.
Okay, so now
we're going to have standardized tests. You have to pass this test. Oh, there's no writing on the test, or you might have to do one paragraph on the test, but it's not a critical thinking test. It's a matching multiple choice for the most part.
So so that started in the 70s? We hit school in what, 75? So that started in the 70s?
I believe standardized tests started in the late 70s to early 80s.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned. I mean, I know there were some standardized tests a little bit before that, but when
it was to test, could you read or not?
Well, I was just
can you do basic math or not?
Yes.
Yeah.
When we started testing the kids every year, the standardized tests that I was reading from people who recommended them, said, go back and use old tests. Now, on one end, that seems counterintuitive because you want them to have the most recent and the more, words that are they might be more familiar with. But that was the reason. The old tests, going back into the 50s, the 40s, etc., those tests were actually a little bit more stringent than the more recent tests. And for us, it would have been in the 2000s or so. So it's funny that you mentioned that. And I guess you would not have wanted people to think critically because that was around the time of the Vietnam War. And that was the first time that Americans started saying, wait a minute, why are soldiers getting... They didn't think that way in Korea and in World War II and in World War I. Now you have folks, and it's on television. That's a good point, Kurt.
And what ended in the 70s?
Which part? The Vietnam War ended in the 70s.
The draft.
Yes.
Why am I going to fight? I'm not going to fight. No. Fight what? For do what? Nah.
For who?
I'm staying here. I'm not going.
And
then we went to an all-volunteer army.
And where do they tend to go find their people for this all-volunteer army?
Low income. Exactly. And you might have noticed war coverage. Are there any pictures of people being shot, killed, maimed? A bomb went off but they don't show the people.
Well, George Bush, I know, said he didn't want caskets returning home. He didn't want them to record that. I remember that was the big thing. And
the other thing is, poor people complain and nobody cares. But when it's a senator's son, I'm not going. Did you see what they were doing over there? It has weight.
Right. Wow, man. Good points. All right. Before we conclude this topic on education, I did want to throw out there and ask you. I ask you first, Terrell.